This is a quite long-awaited review of the 7Hertz Timeless since I first unboxed it in my unboxing and first impression video. I made huge claims of these being something that you might want to buy. Can't believe that is a huge claim. So yeah, this is a planar IEM. What is a planar IEM? I think you should just go and look it up. I'm not gonna waste a lot of your time explaining what planar is. But it's basically a planar IEM. It sounds like a planar IEM. It has planar bass, it has planar mids, it has planar separation, and that is important. And also has a planar treble, which is usually not very good, but with the case in the case of the 7Hertz Timeless, it's actually not bad. To be completely honest, it's very good. It's a very good planar treble, I guess, especially for a low price of $200. And you can see in front of you there are three. In front of the, not you actually, technically it's in front of you. There are three other IEMs that I would like to compare with the 7Hertz Timeless. And all of these IEMs are at least 1.5 times more expensive than the 7Hertz Timeless. So they are actually playing with the big boys right now. First we get the tin P2s, the tin hi-fi P2s, and in this review the majority of my comparison would be comparing the 7Hertz Timeless with the tin P2s, because a lot of them had been asking if these are better than the tin P2s. I already stated that they are definitely better than tin P1s, and that is definitely better than tin P1s. With the tin P2s, because I had the 10p1s before. If you've watched my previous review, I think it's in the review of my Ibasos IT00s or something. I forgot. I remember I put my P1s in one of my reviews, but yeah. So I haven't got a chance to actually review them, but I had the chance, but I didn't review them because my opinions about them is not very popular. And I usually don't care, but with the 10p1s, it's kind of a gray area where I think that they are interesting. They are interesting, but the dynamics is just a bit too compressed there. Delivery is just not very well defined, in my opinion. And the treble is just so dumb. It's like so bad. It's like so fucking dumb. And it's going to be a trend. It's going to be a trend with the P2s here. If you didn't know, I'm usually I really like planars. I really like planars. The HE6 you can see right here, and the Arias that you can't see right there. The LCDX or something like even the E4XX, the 400SE, 400Is, the Sundaras. I really like the Sundaras. So I really like the planar sound. And the 7Hertz Timeless really delivers what I would expect, what I would want a $200 planar IEM to sound like, which is well tuned. It's not extremely tinny and plasticky up top, not disgustingly elevated in its treble, and it has a very clean and good sounding bass. That's at least what I want. But with the 7Hertz Timeless, it also adds a bit wider stage. It has a wider stage. It has a very smooth mid-range and an overall harmonish tuning, so it's a very pleasant sounding IM that you can use with any type of music you have. That's why I really would like to recommend the 7Hertz Timeless, even at the beginning of my review. It's not the most technical IM. It's not the most technical in terms of I am at the price range of these three. Maybe at their price at $200, I don't think any IM could match the technical performance of the 7Hertz Timeless. But at the price that I am showing you right now, that's why I'm putting these here in. It has a bit more challenge here. There are things that the 7Hertz Timeless could still beat these things, but it's not as a stomp if I'm going to compare these with something like the Legacy 4s or something like the Moondrop Starfields or the KXXS. I think the Timeless would just outright blow them away, or like the Manga T. Even the Manga T is very good. I really like the Manga T. If you've watched my review of the Manga T, and yeah, 7Hertz Timeless. I'm not going to go through the build quality and the what's inside the box because I did it already in my first impression video. Go ahead and check them out. And also I did a couple of first impressions of the 7Hertz and something like the 10T2 Evos, the Triple-in HBB Melee, the what do you call it? The Rico SG01, and also the Moondrop Crescent. It's an older set, but I did a lot of that there. So go ahead and check that out. Fuck. And yeah, with the 7Hertz Timeless, but I will talk about the power requirements and the ear tap requirements, because the 7Hertz Timeless is unlike the 10P1s nor the 10P2s. They sound good almost from anywhere. With the 10P1s and the 10P2s, the range of the scalability and the power quality, not power, but more of a quality requirement, which means they sound good with better quality amp. It's not necessarily power what you're looking for. It's more of a cleanness and just higher quality components instead of power. I don't really like when people just outright mention power, because this is a tube amp. It has a lot of power. It can actually power the 10P2s easily at 10 o'clock in powers the 10P2s easily. But it has a lot of distortion, and that's what tube amps do. And it just destroys the sound of the 10P2s, and it's bad. Just turns to shit. However, with the 7Hertz Timeless, you do perceive that less defined characteristics of a tube amp here, but it doesn't sound as mushy and smeared as the P2 would sound with the tube. So it's much more forgiving in terms of of amps. But with that, a lot of people represent this niceness of the 7Hertz Timeless with the forgiving nature, with these not being transparent and scalable with better amps, because they absolutely do. Playing them off with my where the hell is my HIBY? So with my HIBY R6 Pro, which is a very strong DAP, at its price, it's a very good quality DAP, and listening them to with something like this, the topping NX4 DSD, which is still a very good DAC amp. Even with those two, I can hear quite a lot of differences. And comparing these two, and also something like the ES100 or something, with something like the Jotunheim 2 I have right there, it's a monumental difference. It's monumental. It's quite a huge amount of step up in terms of sound quality, plugging the 7Hertz timeless to the HIBY and the NX4 compared it to the Jotunheim. So the scalability here is actually quite good because it's a transparent IEM. It's very good. And in addition to that, fit and tips is key on achieving good sound with these IEMs. I would really advise you to tip roll these, because these sound very different with different tips. For example, the tips I have with them right now is the Sony Triple Comfort ear tips. It's somewhat of a hybrid silicone rubber foam type of material, and it's promoted to have a foamy type of presentation with silicone tight fit. That's what I remember, if I'm not wrong about that. Yeah, and with these type of tips, they sound very differently if you use a regular Sony hybrid. With a regular Sony hybrid, you do experience quite a significant amount of withdrawn quality in its mid-range. And with the foam tips, everything just sounds so over-damped, like the regular foam tips, like the Tin-T2 foams, which are quite good in my opinion. I really like the Tin-T2 foam. It sounds very overly damped and grainy. It doesn't sound correct. And also with wider tips and narrower tips, you have to experience it your own, and you have to experiment it with your own collection of ear tips. Me personally, I really like the presentation of the Sony Triple Comfort ear tips, because they have, in my opinion, with these tips, they have the best amount of soundstage. They have the best amount of separation, and they also present a more balanced presentation too. And they have a better treble timbre, in my opinion. And it's also what's going on with the 10P2, why I put the Sony Triple Comfort ear tips to them, because the relationships of these tips to my ear is they reduce the tinny, plasticky, metallic planar timbre in its treble region. So yeah, it helps, in my opinion. It helps with the crazy amount of shit you have up there with the P2s. With the timeless, not really necessary, to be completely honest. You can use the what do you call it? I used to have my stock ear tips there. I have no idea where did I put it. You can use the stock ear tips with the timeless, and they would sound fine, in my opinion. But they sound different. They sound fine, but they sound different. And this is the best combination, in my opinion. But it's fine. It's fine, but it's different. But this one's better. So, yeah. Just to let you know. And the cable is beautiful. I really like the cable. My experience with the cable is very good. They don't tangle. They don't They're not annoying. They're not microphonic. No, they're fucking great. They're fucking great. They're thin. They're medium thickness, I guess. So yeah. Now with this, the overall tonality, it's almost harmonious. It's quite harmoniously tuned. It's kind of like the what do you call it? The what do you call it? The Starfields. Kind of like the Starfields. So yeah, I really like the tuning here. Because I really like the tuning of the Starfields. I think the Starfields is a bit lacking in treble, and this have more treble than the Starfield. So yeah, really like the tuning, really dig the tuning. I think the problem with the tuning is maybe there are a slight shout in the upper mid range, but that is so minuscule that maybe most of you, if you don't know that there is somewhat of a peak there, would not even realize that that peak is there. And I do prefer them to have a bit less 9 kilohertz energy there. Yeah. For the bass here is very good. It's very deep. It's very what do you call it? Satisfying, I guess. It's, if you look at the measurements of the Timeless, it's very, very similar in the bass region with the 10P2s. But when you actually take a listen to them, it's not very different. It's quite different in their presentation. The bass of the 10P2s is very fast. It's quick. It's concise. It's tight. With a good amp. With a Jotunheim 2, this sounds tight and fast and concise. With a lot of other amps, it just this performs from 40% of its potential to 90% of its potential. 40 meaning like powering them with a phone, and 90 maybe your standard high quality amp. With this, it's more of a 60 to 90 or like 70 to 90, so it's much more forgiving. That's what I meant by forgiving. But you do notice a lot of difference, like what I mentioned before. So with a good amp, I'm going to test these two with a good amp. Okay, so good amp and good recordings, because this thing can't play with anything less than excellent and pristine recording. You can't use the P2s with anything less than pristine recording. I mean Chesky. Other than Chesky, the tuning just turns to whack and you don't know what the hell is actually playing there. And even with the Chesky recording, the T2 have this kind of radio effect. Okay, so if you know me in the previous reviews, I am actually quite sensitive to upper treble elevation. That's why I picked the Z1R over the U12T, and that's one of the main reasons. Because I don't like the U12T's treble. Because I am, apparently, I am a younger audiophile. My hearing still goes up there. And if you are like me and you're looking to buy something, you're looking to buy a plain IEM, it's going to be the Timeless. It's going to be the Timeless. If you're looking for under $500, it's going to be the Timeless. This thing is horrifying. This thing is horrible if you still have like 19 kilohertz or 18 or even 18 kilohertz hearing. This thing is just horrifying. In my opinion, if you have like 17 or 16, it's fine. It's fine. It's good. It's good because you actually hear something up there. With these, it's just balanced up top. I may be a bit too much energy at the upper treble, but it's still very, very, very balanced, very, very smooth up top. And yeah, the presentation. Yeah, enough with that, and the presentation of the bass here is different. With the Timeless, it's a bit more weighty, it has a bit more decay, a bit more body to it. When I listen to, what do you call, to Dream Theater, Train of Thought. Train of Thought. I am not a native English speaker, so my grammar and my pronunciation sometimes are garbage, if you not noticed yet. So yeah, Train of Thought, instrumental edition. At around 5 minutes, you have the very, very satisfying bass playing. At, I think, middle to left ear, you have that very long bass solo there. It's very, very satisfying with the Timeless. With the P2, it's not as satisfying. It's a bit more less deep. The bass is not as deep as the as a Timeless. The P2's drum hits, though, it's very good. It's good. It's about as good as the Timeless, but the extension of bass guitars, it's quite more satisfying here at the Timeless. And when you listen to some of the Chesky recordings, are very high quality recordings, like let me take a look. It's actually from the album World's Greatest Audiophile Recordings. I guess that's, yeah, World's Greatest Vocal Recordings album. Number 3, the third album. You have that music, September in the Rain and What a Wonderful World by Camille Thurman and Casey Abrams. And with those tracks, you do have a lot of somewhat of a bass, acoustic bass playing, and the cello playing, and the weight and the texture and the resolution of the bass at the Timeless is just, in my opinion, a bit better than what you get with the P2. The P2's bass is actually pretty good. Though it's not as good as the Timeless. You do have a bit more organic quality with the Timeless, but its initial delivery of drum hits, in my opinion, I think it's a bit more quicker and more immediate in the P2, and it's actually quite a trend here. While the P2's hits are a bit faster, but its overall timbre and delivery is not as organic as something like the Timeless. So yeah, I guess that's quite a pick your poison type comparison. I usually would go with the more quicker delivery of the P2s. And I definitely do that in my EX1000. My EX1000 has like the quickness of the P2s. However, the EX1000 have that natural dynamic driver bloat. Like it's not bloated. It's not bloated bass, but it has slight. It's like it has that organic dynamic driver delivery. And with planars, you have to do something. It's very good. It's different. It's definitely different. But if you're going to go with the realistic type of bass route, I would go with the Timeless over the P2. If you're going to go with which one has the best bass on the table, it's going to be the EX1000. The EX1000's bass is insane because it's the least elevated here, yet it's the most dynamic here. It's the punchiest bass out of all I have in this table, except probably for the HE6, but the HE6 is not an IEM, so yeah. The Blessing 2's bass is also a bit faster. It's not as fast and quick as the EX1000, but it's also a bit faster than the maybe it's a bit as fast as the P2. I've not really compared these yet, like head to head. I already compared them with the Timeless. So Comparing the Blessing 2 with the Timeless is actually, the Blessing 2 is noticeably quicker and it hits. The decay is about as, maybe the Blessing 2 is slightly faster in the decay too. Yeah, I think it's not as dry. Maybe dry is not the correct word. It's maybe about as quick as the P2, but don't quote me on that. I haven't had a lot of time because I'm doing this like in a hurry. Not really in a hurry. I really want to get this review out of the way. Yeah, because I really want to recommend the Timeless because it sounds very good. The mid-range here is very good. The mid-range here is like listening to the Sendaros. It's not sharp, it's not grainy. It doesn't have that radio effect like the ones in the P1s and the P2s. The radio effect means there is a layer. With the vocal range of the frequency response is very, very wide. It goes from like 500, like there, like in the mid range, till the 20 kilohertz range. That's like the vocal range. It's very, very wide. That's why a lot of things happening here will affect the vocal presentation. That's why a lot of people really judge IEMs and headphones using vocals. And a lot of headphones actually like these, a lot of planar headphones especially, like the HE6 right here, are not very good with vocals in my opinion, and I need to mod these extensively, and it's, as you can see, it's heavily modded. I really want to talk about the mod I did with the HE6. It's quite an elaborate mod that I would like to share with you guys, but maybe later in a dedicated video of the HE6. And it's fantastic now, but it used to not be as good. It has that radio effect which I would like to say it's like the vocal has a layer of upper treble grain attached to the vocal. It's somewhat of a layer of harshness, and it sounds like something came out of an old set of radio, like, yeah. So yeah, not very good. And you have that here. Definitely, it's even worse than the HE6. It's dumb. It's fucking dumb. It's fucking dumb. The upper treble elevation is 15 fucking dBs. It's fucking dumb. But a lot of people seem to like it. I really can't argue if you really just like them, that type of upper treble. But not for me, but a lot of people seem to like it. In my opinion, it kind of ruins the tonal balance. Definitely ruins the fucking tonal balance. So, yeah. It's more of a review of a 10P2s now than the Timeless. So it's going to be joint review, I guess. The Timeless, it's something else, in my opinion. The mid-range here is smooth as butter. It's clean and smooth. It's not as natural sounding as probably the what do you call it? Maybe even like the Starfields as in its tuning, but it's cleaner. It's much more well separated. It's everything sounds good here. Every instrument sounds good here. And the treble here is very exciting, meaning not as elevated as a lot of the dumbasses out there. It's like not as horribly elevated. It's when you have deteriorating ears, and it's sad, but it's true that your ears and my ears will eventually deteriorate as we age. And having a team filled with people who have deteriorating ears to tune an IEM or a headphone with their own ear will result in something like the Abyss 1266, and apparently, maybe the 10P2s, but the guys in 7Hertz, when they are constructing the Timeless, I would imagine they actually listen to one and actually evaluate how they sound, and they sound fucking great. And that's how we get this beautiful piece of shit right here. It's amazing. It's and I know it's quite difficult. I know it's quite difficult for planars to have a neutralish and less elevated upper treble. If hi-fi men can't do it, I wouldn't expect tin hi-fi can do it too. So for something like something quite obscure, the company quite obscure like the 7Hertz, to create a smooth upper treble like this on an IM with small drivers, small planar drivers, in my opinion, is something to be applauded. In my opinion, it's very good, and to have them not lose all of the details here, it's quite detailed too. It's probably not as detailed as any of these IMs, to be completely honest. I think the P2 and the 7Hertz Timeless is a bit the closest amount of detail if you're going to look for detail. Yes, it's if you're going to look about detail, I'm not going to talk about technical performance now, but after I'll conclude the treble here. I'll conclude the overall tuning here. With the Timeless, it's a harmoniously tuned with a full-bodied sound. It has full-bodied mid-range and a full-bodied bass. The treble is not annoying, so it's a very well-tuned planar IM. It's very well-tuned planar IM. Which has planar sound. What is planar sound? You need to listen to it to actually know what planar sound is. Comparing the overall tuning, the mid, bass, and treble, with the P2, it kills all of that. It has the bass here is kind of a bit of a toss-up. The mid range is a much more well balanced here. The mid range here is actually quite warm. It's very good. It's not very good. It's good, but it's too warm. It's a bit not enough in terms of upper mid range, and it rolls off quite early in the upper mid range region, and the treble region is horrible here. It has a dip. It has a fucking dip at the upper mid range and the lower treble region. And the mid-treble, half the mid-treble region, and it peaks at 8K and peaks at the upper treble. So it has basically no tonal balance. The harmonics here, the first time I listen to these, they are fine, but the more I listen to them, they turn to shit. The tuning sucks here. The tuning here sucks too. The X1000 has one of the most horrible tuning. But the technical performance is so fucking amazing that I can fucking ignore it. If you lose the treble here, you lose the detail. Try it. Lose the treble here, lose the upper treble here. Make this a not killer in terms of upper treble elevation. It's still quite detailed. It's not horrible. It's not horribly undetailed. It's not horribly unresolving, but it's much less detail than the EX1000 would have, and the EX1000 has no upper treble. This is basically minus 30 dB upper treble of the P2, and has weird peaks on the treble region, and the bass here is very nice and flat. The mid range is okay. The treble sucks balls. yeah, not the best in terms of tuning. So I'll pick the 7Hertz timeless of the EX1000 any day of the week in terms of tuning. It's a blessing too, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. I would pick the 7Hertz timeless, and that's because it's much more weightier, it's much more engaging, it's much more thicker, full-bodied sound than the thinner presentation of the Blessing 2. Maybe the Blessing 2 is a bit more natural sounding, but with the added weight, I think it's much the timeless much more enjoyable. It's much more enjoyable. It's kind of like the Legacy 4s compared to the Blessing 2 as well. I picked the Legacy 4's tuning, but the Blessing 2's technical performance. But with the timeless, I even picked the timeless in terms of tuning than the Legacy 4s. So yeah, very good. I really like it. It's kind of like the Starfields. I really like the Starfields tuning. I would pick the Starfields tuning over any of these. The tuning only, tuning only, with a bit more treble actually, which is good because this is basically Starfield with a bit more treble. And for the what do you call it, the technical performance, in terms of detail, this is not the king. This, I would say, this is not the king of detail. It is a well detailed for $200. Their asking price is one of the more detailed, one of the most detailed in terms of $200 asking price. But it's not the most detailed here with these things, looking at them. With the P2's detail, I think when you actually, it has a lot of fake detail in my opinion. It has a lot of elevated upper treble. So when you lose the actual treble, and when you judge detail, you need to lose that type of disgusting things up there. Or you can add treble here, which is, I have no idea why do you want to do that. But when putting them on the same playing field, like EQing them to be relatively similar, I can't see that the P2 has a significant amount of more detail than the 7Hertz timeless. It's not even as detailed as the Blessing 2's. So yeah, in terms of detail, the EX1000, in base detail, the EX1000 kills everything on this table. With mid-range detail, it kind of depends on what do you mean by mid-range detail. Is it vocals? Because vocals is, as I mentioned before, full range. Mid-range means just a lot, just like the lower mids or like the mid-mids maybe. I would like to say the EX1000 still kills everything on this table. But for treble detail, these things suck. These things suck because it has no upper treble. And that's the problem with the EX1000. And yeah, the 7Hertz timeless, it's not the most detailed. It's less detailed than the Blessing 2. Sadly, it's much more well extended and more full bodied, but less, in my opinion, detailed when you actually try to look at information behind the actual music. Blessing 2 is a bit better in terms of transient response, which means like the speed. It's also not the fastest type of a IM. With that speed, actually it produced the great timbre that it has, in my opinion. The delivery speed kind of reminds me of something like the HE400Is or the 4XX or the 400 SE, which is actually a huge praise because those things sounds very good. But in my opinion, when you compare those with something like the Sundara's delivery is much more fast, much more tighter, so it's better in my opinion. I think it's a bit slower in terms of the initial leading edge of the attack against something like the P2s or the X1000 or the Blessing 2s. However, the amount of decay that these have, it's very satisfying too. So it's but the attack's not that mushy like the P1s, so it's still very good, but it's not as good as the higher priced contenders here. With the what do you call it, the spatial presentation, which is very interesting because these have a very wide sound stage. These might be the widest on this table, to be completely honest. This depends on what you call wide. For example, this is the stage. This is the stage. If you mean by wide is how far out an instrument is placed in the stage, like for example, this is the stage right here, and you have the violin playing right here, or the drums playing right here. But the edge of the what do you call it? The edge of the stage is quite a few centimeters or like a few inches from the violin, and you call that the end of the stage. Like the furthest instrument that you can hear is the width of the stage. Then the timeless is the widest, because the placement of the instrument is actually quite far out if you pay attention to higher recording. However, with the rest of these, not really the rest of these, the P2s, it has that type of air behind the instrument that makes it sound wider because of that elevated upper treble. If you reduce the treble, the stage becomes like small. But if you don't reduce the treble, it has that air effect, the sound of like a very open sounding IEM. Yeah. With the X1000, everything behind that thing is empty. Everything behind your instrument is just ambience, like ambient noise coming from outside your IEMs. So it's basically infinity in terms of soundstage width, if you count that as soundstage. It's basically fused with the actual room you're listening to. The Blessing 2 is not that impressive in terms of soundstage width. It's very impressive actually, but on this table correction, it's actually more impressive than the P2, because the P2 soundstage is just air. If you want to call that soundstage, it's air basically. Now, it's already been a long video, but I want to be as complete as possible. So yeah, in terms of music that I can listen to, it's a lot more comparison than in the P2s, because when you're buying a planar IEM, it's either you want one because it's cute, like me, I want a planar IEM because it's cute, or you actually want one as a flagship, like, oh, this is my best IEM. Because if you're looking for just sound quality, there's nothing beating the Sundaras in terms of planar IEMs. Just buy a fucking Sundara and be done with it. If you want them to be cute, at least you want them to be fucking enjoyable, get the timeless. I will spare you the pain of listening to the P2s, because when what music does the P2 excel at? A lot of people, when you ask that question, this is me selling the 7Hertz timeless to all of you. I've listened to the P1. I basically eliminated the P1. The P2 is actually a step up from the P1. It's a bit more defined. It's a bit more clean. It's a bit more technical than the P1, and it still has sub bass. It has sub bass. Or if you actually like the second chapter P1, just go ahead with the P1. It's actually a decent IEM, especially for its price. This priced very similar with the P1, so buy these instead of the P1. This is twice as expensive as these, so buy these instead of these. So, what music do you like with listening with the P2s? I imagine something along the lines of rock, metal, orchestra. Sure, okay, these three. With metal, I really want to have the P1, P2s to have. I was really looking for a lot of tracks that I have in my library, or my albums, or my collection, like Dream Theater, or like Pentakill, or even like Pentakill, or even something like the what do you call that? I don't have the classic rock albums out there. I don't have the usual like Led Zeppelin, or I don't know if that's actually a rock band, or like the Metallica. I don't have a lot of that album. A lot of the Metallica albums are not very well recorded. Yeah, but what is it called? Like the Amity Affliction. I also listen to Tool. I listen to from where this thing comes from, Architects. But yeah, a lot of metal albums that I usually use to evaluate these IEMs, and some rock also, and some of the more weirdest stuff David Bowie used to make. Rip David Bowie. I really like a lot of his creations. And the thing is, I can't know what kind of instruments playing there when I listen to the P2. I don't know what the fuck they are playing, except for maybe the drums and the guitars, because that's fucking obvious. But when they start playing with the I have no idea what the fuck is that. Is that a hi-hat? Is that a fucking cymbal or something? I have no idea what the fuck is that. Because the air is just like, the first and second harmonics is covered by the dip, or like the second and third harmonics, depends on what you call that. It's eaten by the fucking dip there, and the air is like fucking everywhere, covering everything. So I have no idea, or all I hear is the I have no fucking idea what the hell is that. With this, you actually know what the fuck is that, and it's also the same thing with orchestra. When I listen to Glow from Miku's Symphony at 2021, I know it's a weeb type of orchestra, but it's very well recorded, it's very complex, and it's very good. It's much better. It's just much better. It's wider also here. Maybe this is more open, and maybe it's a bit more, I don't know what you call it, like microscopic type of shit like that. But you don't know what you're listening to. All you hear was like, oh, there are violins here because it's fucking obvious. There are drums here, it's fucking obvious. There are cellos here. Even the cellos sound a bit more full-bodied here too. You have like cellos here because it's fucking obvious. But then you have the like shit like up top there, and you have no idea what the fuck is that. With the 7Hertz sound, you know what the fuck is that. Oh, there's a harp. There's actually a harp playing here. Holy shit, how can I miss that? Oh, because there is no like covering every fucking thing out there. So yeah, that's basically my review of the 7Hertz Timeless, and why I prefer these over the P1s and the P2s, and to be honest, I prefer these over the Blessing 2s. Because it's a bit wider. I really like Soundstage, has better tonal balance. And when I'm walking around, I'm not really focused on detail. The Blessing 2 still have better imaging. Although separation, because in terms of the treble, I forgot to talk about the treble of the Blessing 2s. God damn it. The Blessing 2s have a bit more mid-treble and lower treble, so you do have the type of percussion compression going on with the Blessing 2s and a bit more sibilance happening with the Blessing 2s. The 7Hertz Timeless a bit more even out in terms of mid-treble and upper treble. It's a bit more flatter type of treble presentation, and I really do like this one. So I actually prefer the 7Hertz Timeless instead of the Blessing 2s. In terms of separation, it does has that planar separation quality in the 7Hertz Timeless. So I do think it's still some there are still arguments to be made that made the Blessing 2 a bit better, because it's a bit more cleaner sounding. No, I mean, it's not cleaner, it's a bit more tighter sounding than the 7Hertz Timeless. So yeah, and maybe in terms of imaging and separation, I think the P2 is actually a bit more cleaner too than the Timeless, and the P2 has still also have that advantage of being a planar and has that planar separation too, because of its tighter quality. And yeah, so basically I really like the Timeless. I would listen to the Timeless a lot. I have listened to the Timeless quite a lot recently because they're great. So yeah, probably going to be my daily driver going on forward here, because I really like planar. I really like planar, and this is a very well tuned planar. I don't listen to a lot of details when I'm out and about. And yeah, a very good set of IEMs. Has good detail, good detail, good overall technical performance, very wide soundstage, like 10T2 wide soundstage, very good separation, very good tonal balance. It's just an overall cheap and good. It's fucking cheap too. Cheap and good IM. Go ahead and buy it. Not the most technical. I guess that's it for the review. Don't forget to watch Jason's video. See you next time. Godspeed.